Angie Harris entered another realm, was face to face with God, and saw where and how souls are created. What she saw was not at all what she had been taught in her religious faith. Is it possible that what you've been taught your entire life about the afterlife, about God, about the creation is all wrong? Comment and let me know. If you have had a profound spiritual experience that you would like to share on the show, you'll find the link to apply to be a guest in the description box. I would love to hear from you. You have a pre-birth or memory of your birth, and your parents also had a very interesting experience before you were born. Could you share about that?
Yes, this is very interesting because as a young child, I was always really connected spiritually. I would even have like visions of angels that would come into my room and like meet with me, and I could see spirits. But I always had this weird, like, kind of obsession with things beyond the earthly realm, kind of like aliens, spirits, even as a very little girl. And I didn't really understand that until later in life. I started having all these like memories coming back to me. And I could remember before I came to Earth being in light. And it was just like pure love, pure light, and like kind of watching and like anticipating. And then deciding, okay, I'm going to go and I choose this family, I choose this mom, I choose this dad. And I, I remember it being very fast. Like I came really fast into this body, which was kind of hard and shocking because my spirit was it felt very large compared to like coming to Earth. And then like integrating into this experience, I remember thinking, oh, there's a lot of pain here. I want to help out with like Earth's pain and my mom's pain and shame and things like that. And later in life, I would say this has probably been in the last 10 years. I began to hear stories from my mom and my dad. They had separated when I was very young, around age 5. And so I thought it was interesting. They both began to tell me the exact same story without knowing that both of them were telling me the same story. And it started with my mom saying, yeah, when I was pregnant with you, there was a light that came out of the sky and was shining on me. And I thought there were aliens coming to abduct you out of my belly. And so it scared me. And so it started out with that story. And I always was like, that's interesting because I kind of remember becoming in light. And then later I asked my dad, do you know anything about light coming down on my mom? And he's like, oh, yes. Yeah, we were out to eat one evening. And on the way home, all of a sudden, this light came out of the sky and was shining on the car and followed us all the way home. And when we got home and it was still like kind of on us, we were outside looking at it. We were calling the news stations, asking like, has anybody else seen this? Nobody else saw it. And then he kind of just dropped it. Well, then it came up again with my mom later, and she confirmed the exact same story again, that this light followed them and they didn't know where it came from. They were both calling news stations, like, where did this light come from? And I was able to put together, as I was hearing all this and then awakening more into my higher self and connection with my spirit, that's when I came to Earth. And so it was a very visible experience for both of my parents and very unique, I think, where they both remember it and I remember it. And I just know that it was kind of a difficult process of moving away from pure love energy to kind of really heavy energy and integrating into a human experience and knowing that I was coming here for a purpose to help heal the earth, basically help people heal. And I'm not sure why I chose to come in such a vibrant like light where people like my mom and dad both were able to see that. But that's that's the memories that have been coming back. And it's been confirmed by both of my parents that they actually did see it and didn't even know they were both confirming that. So that is the story of my pre-birth and how I came here to Earth.
Thank you so much for sharing. That is absolutely fascinating. You
Yes.
mentioned that you remember being the pure love energy and having to integrate into the heavier energy here on Earth. Could you share a little bit more about what that integration process is like?
Yes, this and a lot of this has come to me more as I have kind of remembered and awakened and back into understanding myself as a spiritual being. But having come from this energy, the only way I can describe it is like there's nothing hindering your ability to just be present. It's like the now moment in a constant. Like it's just a constant love, a constant safeness. There, I don't know that there's any words to even describe that for our human experience. But coming and it's almost like it's the painful part is the physical part. The painful part is like taking something of yourself that is so dynamic, like huge and like powerful, and trying to squeeze it into this experience that feels heavy and dense and confusing. Even it's almost like, wait a minute, I don't really know how to be this dense. I don't know how to be in this pain. And then coming to Earth, and then you begin to feel and experience everything around you as well. You experience your emotions of your parents or the people in the environment. And as you integrate into that human experience, it's like you kind of have to just accept it and trying to be more a part of the human life, knowing that this is not really where you're from. And so it's not necessarily that it was completely negative. It's just being a human is hard when you know you're not really a human.
Definitely can relate to that. Being able to, like the feeling of being so constricted and dense here, and also being able to pick up on the emotions and energies as a child. It can be really confusing for people, probably if they don't have that pre birth recollection, to understand what's going on and why they're feeling that way.
Yes. Absolutely. I like to, like, when I do healing work with people, I like to talk about how we come to Earth and we have to be taught how to be a human. We're not really, it's not something that is just a natural thing for us. Like, we come to Earth and our parents and teachers and grandparents and everybody around us, we kind of start picking up those vibrations and synchronizing who we are with that. And then slowly being able to accept, okay, I'm in this physical experience and this is where I am. And then you forget where you came from, which can be interesting until like if you do have an awakening where you're like, oh, I remember all that. But it's a process of like forgetting who you are and then remembering who you are.
You mentioned that you came to Earth with a purpose. What was your purpose? Do you remember the details of that?
I do. I remember, first of all, seeing a lot of pain and shame in the family that I was going to come into. But also the understanding that there was about to have something was about to happen on Earth. And I was kind of giving, out of love, giving myself as a volunteer and as a light to come and share the truth and to help humanity remember who they are. And the pre memories and then the memories that have come back to me as I've kind of integrated back into this connection with my higher self are understanding everything in pure love and having compassion and empathy for the human race, and understanding they just forgot. They just need to be reminded of who they are. And it wasn't any judgment. It wasn't any like, you guys are wrong. I'm going to come and tell you, what you have to do different. It was just like, I want to go and remind people that they are pure love and that there is something beyond the pain that they experience as a human. And then as you do that, the energetics and the vibration rise, which then ripple out to other humans. And eventually, globally, we can help rise the energy and vibration to enhance, basically come into a new ascension and new understanding of ourselves as a species.
That's beautiful. You had at least one experience as a child where you saw a being in your room. Can you share about that? And if there's any other experiences, childhood experiences that you want to share? If you've been feeling disconnected from spirit, disconnected from divine love, I have an offering for you. I now offer one-on-one energy work sessions. It's my very favorite work that I've ever done. I completely rebalance your energy field and give you a transfusion of divine love and healing energy for any specific area of need. And follow it up with feedback on what I find in your energy field, a little bit of spiritual coaching, and simple takeaway practices that you can take into your life and implement to help you cultivate a deep connection with divine love. I offer 30-minute sessions, 45-minute sessions, and I'm currently offering 50% off on my 4-session package. Check the link in the description to sign up. You had at least one experience as a child where you saw a being in your room. Can you share about that? And if there's any other experiences, childhood experiences that you want to share?
Yeah. So the very, very most early memory I have is there was a being in my room. I could draw a picture of it. I know exactly what it looks like still. It was mostly kind of stand in the corner of my room, and I would see it at night, and I told my parents, like, there's something in my room, and they didn't believe me. And so I believe around, I probably 5 or 6, I invited my brother to come and stay the night with me in my room so that maybe if he saw it, he could validate me. And he came and stayed the night one night with me, and he saw it. And so he was able to say, yes, Angie does have something in her room. And at the time, I know now that since there was a lot of trauma in my early life and a lot of like kind of heavy energy, the way I was perceiving this spirit was really kind of scary. And it was it seemed to be kind of dark energy. But I know now that was my perception of it based on how I felt. And the spirit would move around my room. And there would be nights that it would be standing on one side of my room, and another night it would be standing on the other side. And there would be times I would see it like in my hall, like walking down my hall. And I was always a really strange little girl. I sleptwalk a lot. I would dream and act out my dreams. I would, I had a dream that I was taking a bath. I actually went and took a bath while I was dreaming. I didn't even know I did it. I did all these crazy things, but I always had this really deep connection where I was a little bit scared of my gifts, but also intrigued by them. And another really amazing memory I have around that time is when I was around 4, taking a bath. I had cut myself with a razor. Like, I was probably playing with my mom's razor. And I cut my leg, and I was like afraid I'm going to get in trouble. And so I remember thinking, oh, I'll just heal this. And so I put my hand on top of it and started saying, heal. And I asked God, heal this, heal my leg. And I remember watching it disappear off my leg, like literally just going away. And I don't know if I ever told anybody about that at the time, but it's something that's very vivid that I know for sure happened. And I'm always remembering that when I'm thinking about our ability to heal and how we just have to have faith and trust and believe. And just like my little 4-year-old self is like, oh, I'll just heal it, no big deal. It just happened. And so those are just some interesting things that were happening very early in my life. I always was very intrigued with spiritual things my whole life, but those were the prominent things that have come back to me since I've really been awakening.
Do you know now who the being was that was in your room?
I do kind of. I have recently, in the last couple years, been working with a spirit team who call themselves the Wisdom Keepers. And I do believe this being is a part of that ascended team. There is a council of 12. And I believe that he, or it comes across as a masculine, he might be connected with the Octarians, which is an alien race, that like a kind of a higher dimensional alien race. And I believe that this being came with me when I came to Earth to help assist me and remind me who I am. Like, I think he's continued with me my whole path. I just haven't always been in contact with them. But recently I've had more insights and visions, and I've been seeing it's a blue being is what it is, and very like beautiful, vibrant, glowy, kind and loving. It just, in my frequency at the time, it was not kind and loving because I wasn't able to understand it beyond the way I was feeling.
That makes sense. I
Mhm.
would love to move on to talking about your STE that you had while mowing the grass.
Yeah. So this was a life-changing experience for me. I had spent from age 16 to about 35 in religion. And I believe I got caught up in religion just because I was very spiritual, wanting to find love, wanting to feel accepted. My home life was pretty traumatic. And so I spent a lot of time seeking and trying to be perfect. I ended up going to a Christian college, getting a degree in Bible, then going to university to work in mental health because I wanted to help people heal. And this day, fast forward, I remember being in my backyard mowing and just all the normal thoughts going through my head of like, God, I suck. Like, I'm never going to live up to what I need to live up to. God is not going to accept me. Maybe I'm going to screw something up. Like, just a lot of like belittlement of myself, condemning myself, not feeling good enough. And all of a sudden, it was like this flash came before me, and I heard the words, "You're doing it wrong." And I thought somebody was in my yard talking. And so I was like, that's weird. What was that? And so I kept mowing, and then I heard it again. "You're doing it wrong." And so I stopped the mower and I looked around to see, okay, who's talking to me? Who's here? There was nobody there. And all of a sudden I heard it again. "You're doing it wrong. Stop walking in condemnation." And then all of a sudden my entire life flashed before my eyes. It felt like, I don't know if you've, somebody that has like almost drowned or something, when you come out of water and you're like relieved, but you still have that kind of feeling of like water in your lungs, and like all of a sudden you're just like, oh, I'm out of it. But it felt like I came out of this like bubble or this box and began to see life in a second completely different. And everything in my life started to flash before my eyes. I started to have this overwhelming feeling that I wasn't doing what I was supposed to be doing with my life. I started feeling like everything I believed wasn't real. I started to think about all the effort I put into trying to be good enough for God. I started thinking about all the things I had given up to for God, like music and like fun things, kind of so perfect. And then I heard, this is a really old Christian song, but I know now that like Source will use things that we can understand to speak with us. But there was a really old Christian song that talked about walking in faith or walking in liberty. And all of a sudden I realized I don't know what that means. I don't even know what it means to not walk in condemnation. And so I remember thinking, okay, I don't know what just happened to me, but something happened to me, and I'm willing to explore this. So I started really seeking even more so, like, what is happening to me? Why did I feel like this? And I remember the next thing was I just suddenly had this urge to quit going to church, which was, I was like, never would have considered that because I worked with the youth ministry. I worked in the women's ministry. I was there like, 4 days a week. That was my life. That was my family. And I what went a lot, like my family wasn't religious or never went to church. So I was going by myself. I was choosing to do this and facing a lot of like kind of what I consider persecution from people for being a Christian. And so I always kind of had this view of who I was versus the world around me. And that completely changed that day. And I started realizing that that's not who God is. That's not who I am. That's not what we're supposed to be living our life. Like we're literally supposed to be living in freedom. We're literally supposed to feel safe and loved. And there's nothing that I've ever done or could do, right or wrong, to be accepted by this divine being that I consider to be God. And so I remember the very first thing I did, which kind of seems funny to me, but I was so fearful of making the wrong choice and like going to hell and, you know, having all this judgment on me that I wouldn't even listen to non-Christian music. I remember being terrified if I like heard it. I was like, oh no, like God's going to be mad. And the very first thing I decided to do was turn a channel on the radio station in my car and listen to music I had enjoyed before I became a Christian. And it was really hard. Like I was having to fight through this feeling of I'm disobeying God. And eventually it became easier. But once I took that step, things started to shift for me very quickly. And right after that, I started hearing a voice telling me, reach out to your dad, reach out to your dad. And my dad and I were not really, I mean, I saw him at holidays. We didn't really have a contact much, but I didn't want to. I was afraid to. I was afraid I was going to get rejected. I was afraid something bad would, you know, I don't know what I was thinking, but I kept hearing, you need to reach out to your dad. You need to reach out to your dad. And I fought it for probably a good 6 months. And then finally I gave in and I texted him and said, hey, can I come over, you know, and visit? So I started to go visit him like once a week. And within 6 months of doing that, he was diagnosed with cancer. And had I not listened to that voice, I would not have been with him when that happened. And he ended up passing in 2020. But I got to have 3 years of my life with him where we were able to reconcile and like kind of, I had like a dad that I never had in those last 3 years of his life. And then because of that connection, I believe that it's opened up my ability to connect with him in spirit now, which has been transformative for me. So I think everything played a part in like the timing of my awakening in my backyard mowing. And then hearing the voice telling me, you know, it's okay to start taking these steps. Like I even quit my job and like everything just changed, and then reached out to my dad. And it just started unfolding for me. Like the universe was like, okay, you said yes. So we're going to start putting things into place for you. This is how your life's going to look now. And that's where it all started, was that day in my backyard where I heard an audible voice.
Amazing. Thank you for sharing about your journey with your dad.
Yeah.
I'm sure that that will be really comforting to a lot of people.
Yes. Yes.
And you continued communicating with your dad after his transition. I would love to hear about your communications with him. You've actually had multiple different experiences. So let's
Yes.
start maybe at the beginning. What was the first
Sure.
experience you had?
Yeah, the very first experience was just really small and gradual. I was in a lot of grief. So he died during COVID, and so I had lost my job 5 days before he passed. So I did not have a job. I did not. My dad passed. Like I was in very, very deep grief. And to get through it, I would go hike every day. And the first time I thought I heard his voice was on a hike. And I just heard, I've always loved you. And I was like, that's weird. It kind of sounds like the same voice that I heard when I had my weird experience. Like, but am I making this up? And as soon as I thought, am I making this up? I heard it again. I've always loved you. And then I heard Ange, and my dad always called me Ange. And so I'm like, oh, I think this is dad. And so I remember I sat down on a rock to like see if I could hear and listen more. And I did. I felt my dad's presence show up. And he's like, I've always loved you, Ange. I'm so sorry that I made you feel the way you did. And of course, I was just so grateful to hear from him. I'm so happy. And I kind of made a little memorial at that place in the woods for him based on that experience. And then a couple months after that, I was waking up one morning and all of a sudden I was out of my body. And I found myself in this scene where I believe that my dad kind of created this for me to feel comfortable, but I was on a basketball court. It was really weird. So I like all of a sudden was standing on this court, and my dad shows up in front of me, and he had on a blue and white striped shirt and blue jeans, and he was just looked radiant. And I was so excited. I like ran up to him and was like talking to him, and he was like, "It's so amazing here." And like, I am so, happy. Everything's good. Like was just like talking to me. I don't know all the details. I can't remember everything he said about his experience there. But what I do remember him saying is he grabbed my shoulders and he looked me in the eyes and he said, "There's nothing, no one, or anything on this earth that should ever cause you to be this upset. Because when you get back to this side, the only thing that matters is love." And for just like all of a sudden, all my problems just went away. It was just like, oh, I don't have to worry about all this stuff. All I have to do is be love. And so it just like changed me in a second. And I was just so grateful and excited to have this moment with him. And I remember I turned around and I started walking away from my dad. And I started, then this like epiphany, like, oh, wait, he's dead. Like, what just happened? So I turned back around and he was still standing there. And I said, "Wait, Dad, you're dead. Like, how am I talking to you? Can I really do this?" And he started laughing. He goes, "Of course you can. As above, so below. You can manifest anything you want, Ange." And I was just so happy and excited. I ran back to him and I was hugging him and just felt so peaceful and loved. And then all of a sudden he says, "I need to go. Your body's upset." And I was like, "What are you talking about?" He's like, "I need to go. Your body is upset." And that's when I realized I wasn't in my body, and my body was still here on earth in my bed. And I was weeping and I was crying. And he finally, like, we stepped away and I came back into my body and I felt all the pain again. But then I brought back with me this truth of like, wait a minute, I don't have to hold on to pain because all I have to be is love. That is it. Everything is about love, just like my dad said. And so that completely changed me. And I started really diving into meditation very deeply and wanting to get to know my spirit guides, wanting to get to know my dad more, working with his spirit. And that's when a lot of things started happening that were very unexplainable to me that I had never experienced. The next thing that happened was I was meditating and my dad came through to me and he said, "Angie, I need you to forgive me." And I hear this, I'm like, "Oh, I already forgave you. Like before you left, we're good. We don't have to worry about that." And he says, "No." He's like, "There's a difference between just saying I forgive you and actually letting go of the pain that I caused you." And he said, "When you let go of this pain, not only are you going to heal and your vibration and frequency rise, my vibration and frequency will rise as well because you are helping me release that karmic energy I left behind with you where you felt so unseen and traumatized by me. And so you are helping do work for us on this side by doing your work here on earth." And it just was the most amazing thing I ever heard. And then he went into explaining to me that the reason he knew this was because he was going through his review. He was going back through his life and seeing everything he had experienced from his point of view and then from everybody else's point of view. And that he felt everything that he caused me to feel while he was here on earth. And he felt the grief and the sadness and the pain. And he wanted me to know that I didn't need to carry that anymore and that I could actually use it for a purpose and to help other people to heal. And he explained to me that it was gonna be something that I could teach other people, that when we do deep healing, it's not just for us. We're doing it for the loved ones and ancestors and those who are still in spirit, to help them kind of be able to raise their vibration. And therefore, if they choose to come back and be a human, they come back without that same pattern. And so we clear that karmic cycle out that had been going on through these different lifetimes. And that the judgment that the spirit was going through, my dad's spirit, wasn't in condemnation, as the voice told me when I awoken. It was in love. It was in compassion. It was in desire for everything to return back to the truth of itself, which is love. And put me even deeper on this journey of like really diving into who I was spiritually and anything else I was supposed to be here on earth to do. And I started having more out of body experiences. There was, I was in meditation, a deep meditation one day, and all of a sudden I saw myself in this very bright room. And I didn't even know it was a room at first because it was so bright I couldn't see. It was just felt like it was pure white and overwhelming love. I had never felt anything like that before, but I knew it was a room because all of a sudden a brighter white light came and started to shine into the room, and I could see windows all around the room. And it was like beyond, I couldn't even like comprehend what was happening. And then all of a sudden a wooden chair appeared right beside me on my right side. And then a door appeared to my left. And I just impulsively grabbed the chair and walked to the door. And when I got to the door, I unzipped my body. I took my body and I set it on the chair, and I walked out the door and basically walked into a different dimension. And it felt this like pure, beyond love. I don't even know how to describe it. It was just the most magical thing I've ever felt. And I remember thinking, oh, I want to go further. I want to go explore this place. And so I remember I started to take a step forward, and then I heard, no, you're only supposed to feel this and experience it. You need to return. And next thing I know, I come back in my body, and I was like, what was that? And it was really crazy because it like just gave me this very small glimpse of what it's like to not be in a body, like pure light, pure love. And then that led me into my next experience where I was meditating, and I began to leave my body again. And I saw myself rising up above the earth. I could see the earth's realm. I could see the energy of the earth. I saw every single little light on every little thing, a tree, blades of grass, everything was vibrant and beautiful and like rainbow, like colors you cannot even describe here on earth. And I kept rising and rising and rising away from the earth. And eventually it kind of disappeared. And I found myself going through these layers of different energies. And I came into this layer that was like, it was like dark, but it felt like this safe, like wound of the universe. And I look around and I start seeing billions and billions and billions of stars. And my heart began to explode with love for every single one. I was like, wow, this is so beautiful. Look at all these beautiful stars. And as I'm looking at these stars, I start to zoom in a little bit, and I notice these aren't stars, these are souls. And I was like, oh my God, they're just all over. They're just so many, and it's so beautiful. And as I'm like mesmerized by all these souls around me, and I'm like, I'm one of these too, I feel this presence to my right side, and it's so overwhelming and so beautiful. I start to turn and I look over, and all of a sudden this ginormous energy is there in front of me, and it's got every single color and radiating. It's just like beyond magnificent. It was brighter than the sun, but yet didn't hurt my eyes to look at. Like, I don't know if I had eyes, but I felt like I did. And so I'm seeing this and I'm watching this, and all of a sudden little tiny, these little dots I was seeing everywhere started shooting out of it. And it was constantly shooting little its out of itself. And all of a sudden, I had this insight that this is what it means to be created in the image of God. We are a literal replica of this energy coming out to experience itself in a new way. And I am one of those, and you are one of those, and we are all one of those. And after I have this experience, I come back into my body and I'm just like, oh my gosh, how do you contain this? How do you contain this much love and insight and beauty, and like having these experiences and still have to be here in this painful world sometime? But that just really, all those combined, and then just having experiences with my spirit team and spirits coming to visit me, I started to just have this deeper understanding that this is what I'm here to do. I'm here to remind people of this is where we come from. This is what we really are. And when we come back into that safeness and truth and the pureness of that love, this life begins to look much different, and we find freedom from the things that keep us hindered in the painful cycles that we've been living in, or the things that we believe are true about us that are not true. And I just want that to be what people experience and come back to in themselves.
Wow, those experiences are incredible. Going back to the experience you had with your father, it's just so amazing to me that he talked to you about how forgiveness releases karma. I've often wondered if that's the case. I know you said you'd had experiences with Jesus, and so you have some Christian background, and I often wondered if that's what Jesus was actually doing, because some of his words on the cross were, Father, forgive them. And if there is some kind of power in forgiveness to actually release karma so that people don't have to be tied to coming back and trying to clear up their own karma.
Yes. Yeah, that's exactly what I have found through this. It really made a lot of sense to me to know the way my dad explained it to me was, you know, this has been something that has been passed down in my family lineage for a long time. The pain of being, you know, of the abuse, or the father figures not seeing their children and things like that. And when he was able to see it from that new perspective, he wanted to release it. But the way he explained this was, when he's in pureness, when he's in complete love, there's not that density to need to even work on it. He doesn't feel the pain. He feels my pain, because he was integrating himself into my experience and feeling the way I felt. And so he knew from that perspective of a higher dimensional being, where he was no longer in the physical experience, that I was the one that could actually work with the density and the pain of it, which would kind of release this energetic connection between us. And the way he gave me this like visual of my energy shifting and changing and rising into a new frequency, and then his energy rising into a frequency. And he explained to me that as he was able to shift out of some of these karmic cycles that his soul had kind of pulled in as he had gone through different lifetimes, that by opening that energy back up, he was able to then begin to step into a role as a guide for me. Because with that pain that I still had with him, I was kind of holding, like, it was like an energy cord where I was holding him, and he would have to come back and try to release that energy himself as a human, but I can do it for him while I'm here. So he doesn't have to come back and do that. Now, if he does choose to come back, like he has told me that he is going to come back. He told my nephew's child, which is kind of weird for me. But he did tell me, I'm going to come back into this other part of this family, because the family on that side has not awakened yet, and they have not stepped into their understanding. So his purpose is going to come back to help that side of the family awaken. And now he can do that because I have helped him release that cycle that had been going on so long. And he had been carrying this kind of pain in his soul where he was coming back to earth to try to release it. And this is a difficult thing to do, especially if you have a lot of anger and abuse and pain with somebody that has transitions and past. I hear this from a lot of people, like, I don't even want to hear from them because they were so mean to me and so much abuse. And I have compassion for that because I understand it on that level, but I also understand it from the spirit's perspective now that there's only pure love, and there's this desire to not have to have that repeated, but they have to find somebody on earth that's willing to do the work in order for that pattern and karmic cycle to be released in whatever lineage that a volunteer or a healer may come into earth to choose to release. And so it's really amazing to think that we're so connected on a frequency level with the spirits that we know on the other side, and being able to go through the healing work, even though it's painful, even though it's hard to forgive sometimes when you feel like you've been violated or in pain, but understanding that they also played a role for you, and that in many ways we all kind of came to earth to experience something like this so that we could learn from it, grow from it. And, I believe our pain is like a diving board for our purpose. Once we understand that our pain is part of what actually teaches us, we can use it to jump off of and use that pain to help others to heal. And we're not just helping each other here on earth, we're helping the lineages, like up to 7 generations behind us and 7 generations in front of us, release karmic cycles. And it's so beautiful.
Thank you so much for sharing that. I would love to ask you about your other experience where you saw the light. Well, I don't know what word do you use for that? People call it God, source. Oh.
I use source. Mostly source is the easiest for me because after seeing the energy of it, it's the label of God sometimes feels a little too religious for me.
Yeah. So I would love to ask you, what was it like to be so close to source?
Honestly, in my human self, I want to say overwhelming, but in my spirit self, in that moment, it felt like pure peace. It felt like there was, like, I didn't even think about the fact that I was still here on earth or a human or had, bills to pay or negative experiences to go through. It was just like this safe feeling of, I'm just here. I'm home. This is who I am. This is where I belong. And having that deeper awareness of like what Jesus said, the I am, like I always go back to the teaching where Jesus was asked, are you God? And he didn't say, yeah, I'm God. He said, I am. And the message of the I am is for all of us, that we're all the I am. We are all that energy, an exact replica of it. And we get to come experience something outside of that so that we can remember it. And eventually, I believe that our desire in our soul cycle is to get back to the place where we are completely integrated back into our truth of the I am. So the only way I can describe it is peace and safety. And like the safety and peace that we experience on earth doesn't even compare to that. It would be like, I have absolutely no care, no worry, no thought of concern. It just is, there's the only moment is now, and the now moment is eternal. And the eternal moment is pure bliss and love forever. And that is how I would describe that.
You saw the souls, for lack of a better word, coming out of the light. I would love to hear your perspective on the creation of the souls. Do you believe that, of course, this is all happening outside of time, so language is really tricky, But do you believe that we exist within the light in some way? Do we have a sense of self or a sense of awareness?
I do believe in some capacity that, because when I was one of those stars or souls in that realm, I was aware of myself, but I was also aware that I was all of the other souls. That there was no need, there was no comparison, there was no competition, there was no I my experience is different than your experience. It was like we are all just one energy. And then within that energy are multiple different notes. The only way I can describe it as a human is like a song. Like you have multiple notes in a song, but it makes one song. And it's a symphony of energy that we can hear and we can feel the vibration of. And that's what I really experienced as far as every single one of us are one energy. We are different notes of a symphony, experiencing ourselves as an individual here and in different dimensions, depending on where we are radiating our frequency in different realms. And so the way we experience ourselves is going to be based on the frequency that we're in. And for us, part of our soul, the energetics of it is like that light that came down for me. This is the physical, dense part of my experience, but I could be having another experience in another dimension that I may not be completely aware of until my vibration moves enough where I can hear, sense, feel that other part of my soul. And I think this is why the message of love is so prominent in the teachings of anything connected with spirit and with God, is that when we love, we are loving ourselves, because it may appear to be multiple of us, but we are all just one energy and one soul experiencing ourselves with a different like vibration is what I would say.
Thank you for explaining that. I would love to hear about your experience or experiences with Jesus.
Yeah. So Jesus came through to me shortly after my dad passed, actually. I had really been going through a lot of questioning because I had left the church, and a lot of people were reaching out to me saying that I was, going to the dark side, that I, sinning, I'm going to go to hell, like all this stuff. But I kept telling them I can't tell you what happened to me. I know you don't understand this, but that moment in my backyard, I can't deny it. It changed me beyond anything I ever thought would ever change me. And I absolutely 100% without a doubt know that it was pure love. And there's can be nothing that is against pure love. So if I'm going to go against pure love, I'm going against my own self. I'm going against my truth of what I know to be the truth of who we are and what we would consider God or source. And so I really was diving in because I'm like, okay, so what is Jesus then? What was his message? Why do we have this being that, we were taught to worship or follow? And Jesus came through to me multiple times and explained to me, I never was here on earth to be, served or worshiped or made this God image. I was literally here to remind people of who they are. And then he began to show me like himself meditating and how he's, the story of him going into the desert for 40 days and 40 nights. He's like, I did that to overcome my ego. I was overcoming my limitations. And so just like you will go off to a retreat to meditate, to work on healing, that's how I did it in my time. Is I went and like tested myself, the things that I needed to release so I could step into my power in what we would call a Christ consciousness now, which I was trying to help humanity remember that you are all capable of the same thing that I am capable of. And that's why he even spoke, you will do greater things than I. You will, you will heal. You will, come into this understanding of love beyond what I can even teach you in this moment. And, his ability to create disciples of what we would call were just awakened souls who would continue the mission of loving and passing on the Christ consciousness. And then, of course, the ego and humans gotten involved in that, kind of distorted the message. But he was just, he was a spirit just like we are, that came to earth, that volunteered to play a role to teach humanity who they are. And he is still, his frequency and his spirit is still very present. And beyond the religious comprehending that any of us could understand, he doesn't want any of that. He doesn't even want to be seen as like more important than any other spirit. The way that spirit has always communicated to me about how they view themselves beyond this physical realm is that they always say, we have order, but we don't have hierarchy. And so when you consider one of us more important than another, you're looking at it through the lens of your ego and the human experience. And so we may see Jesus as like this prominent spirit on the other side, but he has experiences that maybe other souls haven't had in the physical realm, but his vibrant energy is the same as any other spirit that we would be in contact with. And his message is the same as what my dad's message was when he came through. And so I don't, that might sound blasphemy to people in religion, comparing like Jesus's soul and spirit to any other, but that's how he sees himself as well.
I love the way that you explain that. I remember when I first deconstructed, because I used to be a Christian also, and I didn't believe that Jesus was the only divine God anymore. And I would explain to Christians and say, I believe that we're all divine in the same way that Jesus was, but maybe Jesus was the closest soul to God or something like that. But the more I've listened to the great masters and their actual teachings, the more I've come to understand that Jesus himself wouldn't want to be described like that, because you have to have a pretty big ego to want to be the best and the brightest, right?
Absolutely. That is spot on. Like, it's the ego. And our ego is what makes him important. Like in many ways, I think we use our ego to make something outside of us important so that we don't have to rely so much on our own power and our own potential. Because in many ways, I think humans are afraid of it. I think we're afraid of our power and potential because it can be threatening to be light in a world that's dense, where you stand out and you're different. And just like Jesus was, I mean, what did they do to Jesus? So that's a remembrance that we have as humans, is like, if I'm powerful, if I'm seen as this divine being, maybe I will get, persecuted and killed as well. But he was just an example of, he knew who he was. He knew where he came from. He knew where he was going back. And that's why he didn't fight against this mission that he came to volunteer to do. He just was here to remind us.
Right. Well, Angie, I would love to give you a chance to share where people can find you and anything that you have going on that you would like people to know.
Sure. You can find me on any social media platform. I have an Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, YouTube, and it's all under Soul Alignment Mentor. And just make sure that you find me. There are some people that pretend to be me out there. And also my website, angieharris.org. And I have two opportunities to work with me. I do one-on-one healing work with people. I have what I call Ascension membership, and people can join that if they're wanting to do healing work or have a community of people to hang out with. And I also have a healing circle of a circle of healers that meet together, where I kind of help guide, lead, encourage. And the purpose of the healing circle is not for me to stand out and be important and look at me, I know everything. I want the healers to come together and remind each other of who they are, so that we can all keep each other accountable in love, and to then radiate our light outward. And I just know that being unique in this world can be difficult because it can feel kind of lonely. So I've just created these containers for people to find like-minded souls to come, share. This is what I might be struggling with today. This is what I need help with. Let's get together and meditate. Let's share and coach each other through this, and then we'll go back out and share our light. So those are some opportunities that I have where people can work with me.
Wonderful. I'll have those links in the description. Angie, I want to thank you so much for sharing your beautiful, profound experiences with us today. And I have 2 quick questions that I ask all my guests that we can close out on. The first one is, what is the best way for people to connect to the divine love and bliss of the other side while in the body?
The number one thing is to quiet your mind. And I always encourage people, go inward first. You will always find the answers inside of you. And the seeking it outside of yourself can feel confusing because there's so many people and so many things saying things. But as soon as you drop out of your mind and stop trying so hard, and you pull it yourself into the heart in the love frequency you are, then it will fall together. You just have to have the patience to trust that that's going to come for you. And that's the way I would describe that.
And my final question is, if you could give one message to everyone on the planet, what would it be?
Love is all that matters. Exactly what my dad said when he came. Nothing, no one, anything on this earth should ever cause you to feel like you're not worthy, or you're not important, or you can't make it through something. Because when we all get back to the other side, the only thing that's going to be most important matter is love. And so love yourself. It's okay to love yourself, and allow that love to radiate out of you.
Thank you so much for watching. My guests' links can be found in the description box. If you have had a near-death experience, pre-birth experience, out-of-body experience, past or between life memories, or spiritual awakening story that you would like to share, find the link to apply in the description box. If you would like to support the channel, we have a few fun ways that you can do that. I do have a merch store linked in the description. We've put some of the phrases on t-shirts that you guys requested. I have affiliate links to my favorite blue blockers, my favorite red light panel, and a couple of other companies that I work with. You can join my membership at the Sanctuary. You can sign up for an energy healing. I also offer a 4-session energy healing package. You'll find all these links in the description. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for your support. Now go live your most extravagantly loving life.